this job in 3 months made me more of a man than 2 years of army. I never felt so manly in my life before. This is really tough as hell.
From Value Invest Asia, this is the Asian Mavericks. We explore the hidden stories of successful founders, business leaders, and investors in Asia. Here's your host, Stanley Lim.
This week, we chat with Jerry Lee. He's the co-founder of Great Solution Learning Center and the creator of WritingSamurai.com. And Jerry is someone who has dreamt to be an entrepreneur since very young. He ended up reinventing the way traditional tuition center actually works by bringing online learning to the public. And that's way before Zoom video communication was even launched. His journey was filled with many challenges and failures as well. Yet, what surprised me is that he remained very determined. Even today, he's still thinking of how to grow his business even more by creating a learning platform with artificial intelligence that will help kids have a more personalized learning experience. We'll come to all that, but let's start the journey right at the beginning when Jerry is just a young, restless boy from a loving family in Singapore.
Grew up in a 4-room flat with 2 siblings. 4-room flat, 2 siblings, middle income family. We went to neighborhood schools. And I think it was from there where my interest in business started picking up. Because I remember the conversation I had with my mom was, she was trying to make me be a doctor. So she was asking me next time in the future, do you want to be a doctor? So I asked about the job scope of a doctor because I thought it's just, seeing patients and then dispensing some medicine. But she went on to say you got to do surgery, you got to cut people up. And then I got a bit disgusted and I know I'm not very good with my hands. So I thought, okay, that's not for me. What's another job? So she said lawyer. Straight away I said, no, not interested. And she went down the list until she came to one that said businessman. I said, what does a businessman do? I don't understand. And she said, buy and sell things. That was a very rudimentary explanation. So I thought, okay, that sounds easy enough. And then from then onwards, I think the seed was sown in me that I wanted to be an entrepreneur / businessman when I grew up. So I think when I was young, I started buying and selling things, really like playing businessman. So I would go to my cousin's house, and he had stuff to give away for free. He did not want them, dinosaur stickers, books, everything. So I thought, hey, you can sell all this stuff. This is valuable. I know my friends in school will like it. So I'll collect all those stuff and I'll start selling them in school. So a lot of small projects like that. And then how it all gelled together, now that I look at my business, but then if I were to connect the dots looking backwards, I think one of the turning point was when I started writing my own magazine. So I was writing this magazine called Jerry's Mega Magazine. I was inspired by Mad Magazine. Yeah, so I started taking a bunch of foolscap paper, designing the cover page, and then every column I had, a column for comics which I would draw on my own. There will be a column where I report the news, but of course the news are not very meaningful news. So I'll write down all this, report all this funny stuff, and then I think towards the end I had a column where I report about soccer. Because for some reason I saw a lot of kids were bringing newspapers to school not to read the news but to follow soccer news. So I thought, soccer sells. I'm going to write about our inter-game soccer in school. So a lot of people bought a lot of people wanted to read the magazine because they wanted to follow the soccer column. And I think one thing I learned is everybody likes reading about themselves. So to make the magazine more popular, I feature all my friends inside. Right. This person said that, this person did that, this person scored a goal, this person missed a penalty shootout, something like that. And everybody wanted to read about themselves.
As we move on, in your life, of course, we reach the age where you have to go to university. And tell me more a little bit about how you end up, for your higher education. How do you choose which subject to go into, and why did it interest you in that area?
Okay, so in junior college, actually, when I was growing up, I knew I was going to either be an entrepreneur or a writer. But I found out that writers and artists tend to be quite broke. So I don't want to be a broke writer because I realized living in Singapore was quite expensive when I was growing up. So my plan was to be a businessman, make a lot of money first, and then when I retire or when I'm winding down my business, I'm just going to go into writing full time once I'm more financially secure. So that was the goal.
As Jerry finished his tertiary education, he was met with the first major decision in his life to choose a subject that he wanted to study for his university. Unfortunately, his grade did not allow him to pursue his passion for journalism, so he would wind up in the engineering program. And at this point in his life, he was determined to focus on his studies and putting aside many of the creative business projects that he used to do in his younger days. However, he did come across a few critical experiences that formed a deep impression of looking into the business of online learning.
For university, I found I found like a lot of time was spent studying, a lot of studying. So I didn't have time to do all these crazy projects that I had done when I was in primary school and maybe in secondary school. But then one experience stood out. That experience was learning online. So I think I was sick for a long period of time. I can't remember what was I down with. I think some fever. And I was learning online at home. So in university in NTU, they record the lessons that you miss. So if I miss the lesson, I can just log into my student portal and watch the lesson from home. And I was learning at home and I was learning without any distractions. And I thought, hey, this is awesome. Again, it did not really connect. I think what changed was I started going for lectures less and less. So that was one experience. The experience did not connect until one day I was getting the entrepreneurship bug ready because it's been suppressed for so long. So one day I remembered I was standing outside a tuition center and I was observing how the parents were struggling to fight for parking lots. There was limited parking and I was counting the number of shoes outside the tuition center. And I was like, wow, there's so many kids in this tuition center. There's not enough parking lots available for the parents. And then I see the hassle of the kids rushing out of the tuition center, the parents trying to fetch them. I find like a lot of logistical problems. It's a nightmare. And why aren't people learning online? Like the universities are really doing it. Why aren't we doing it for public schools? Why aren't we doing it for tuition centers? Why aren't we doing it for enrichment programs? So I decided that when I left university, this is one of the entrepreneurship pursuits that I will look into, I found it in the back of my mind. So that was something I wanted to do when I graduated.
At this point of the story, the reality of life is setting in as Jerry graduated. Without capital and experience, it is really hard for anyone to just jump into starting a business. So Jerry entered the workforce like everyone else, putting his dream of starting his own business on hold. However, working for others turned out to be just what he needs to prepare him for his future.
I remember the first job I applied for was with a huge MNC. And it said engineering planner on the position. So I thought, sounds very cool. Engineering planning, I can do that, no problem. But when I went into the job, the engineering planning role was not ready yet. So when I went in, I had nothing to do except admin work. So they put me under the lady in charge of administrative work. And what my job scope was to collect timesheets from engineers. And if anybody work in a large MNC and has to do timesheets, they know that it's a pain. Like the engineers hate it. So I spent my time collecting timesheets, being a nuisance to other engineers. And I was doing filing and paperwork, which was not what I wanted to do. So I think once I discovered how to do Visual Basic and some macros, I automated my job. So Monday I walked in, I pressed one button, I clicked a little bit. 2 hours, my entire weeks of work is completed. Within 2 hours. So I just sit there and I'm like, I can't even pretend to look busy because we're in a cubicle. I can't even pretend to look busy. So I downloaded business ebooks, most notably investing ebooks, because I thought, oh man, if this continues on, I'm going to go nuts. So I need to make sure my financials are more stable. So I started reading investment books. Yeah, and I started seeing how investing and business is somewhat similar. After that, I started looking for a job. So when my boss came over, she would see that I'm looking for a job. At that point in time, I think after a few months, I was so jaded. So I think I lasted about 5 to 6 months before I jumped from the engineering planning role, I jumped to marine construction,
Right.
tiny SME. I think I lasted there for about slightly more than 1 year. It was super, super tough work. I think it was, but I'm super thankful for the job because nowadays, whenever I encounter any obstacles or difficulties, I will compare it to this marine construction job, and I realize that whatever problems I'm facing is really peanuts. It's really small potatoes. So I remember after the first 3 months of probation, my director asked me, how do you find the job so far? And I said, boss, this job in 3 months made me more of a man than 2 years of army. I never felt so manly in my life before. This is really tough as hell. And then he laughed. Yeah, he laughed and he liked it. He liked my answer a lot. I was actually becoming a workaholic. I remember during Chinese New Year, I was finding Chinese New Year so boring, and I wanted to get back to work. And my colleagues thought I was crazy. But it came to a point where I was working 12 hours, I think more than 12 hours every day. It was taking a toll on my health and my life as well. I remember when I quit my job, the first thing I did was took a 3-day break to go to Redang.
Okay.
Yeah, but before that, tuition center opportunity appeared. So it was quite interesting. The moment I quit my job, I think I threw in the resignation letter, and I think within 1 week, I was looking through the classified ads in the newspaper, and I saw that tuition center was available for takeover.
After working non-stop for his job, Jerry was suffering from burnout. He knows his lifestyle is not sustainable and is really taking a toll on his health as well. So he quit his job and went on a well-deserved rest. But just as one chapter of his life come to a close, another one is opening up just at the right time. And this is also when Jerry formalized his partnership with his co-founder, Jimmy.
I met my current business partner when we were 13 years old. So we met each other in secondary 1, and I always knew that he was very good in mathematics. So I think in secondary 3 or secondary 4, he actually topped the whole level in mathematics. And all the students in school was consulting him for mathematics. And he was one of the first few students who was teaching tuition part-time at the Void Deck and making a nice income. And all our classmates were going to him for math problems. When we entered the working world, when I graduated, he was selling insurance. So he met up with me to sell me insurance. I bought insurance from him, but he's no longer an insurance agent. So what happened was we were playing with this idea of starting a tuition center, and I told him about online learning. And he was quite interested in that idea, but he felt that we both of us agreed. And maybe somehow he convinced me that it's better to go into the tuition industry, run a physical tuition center, and then from there branch out into online learning. Because if you just go directly into online learning, it may be a bit too weird, and customers will not accept it. Because at that time, the mindset was children cannot learn online.
When you tell me that story of how he convinced you to start a physical center first and then before going online, it reminded me of the story of Netflix as well, right? Well, because they when the inception, they already know that they want to deliver content through streaming, but yet they started out with DVD by mail first, at the traditional business first, before disrupting it. And so I feel that what your partner said really have a valid reason, and it's fascinating that you guys chose this path. But I understand it's not a very smooth journey for you to transition to online, right? So maybe tell me a little bit about the struggles here when you first got the tuition center. Were you just growing it traditionally, or straight away you wanted to jump into the online space? And especially, I imagine at that time, the infrastructure for online wasn't as great as now as well, right?
Yeah, it wasn't. So I think in theory, right, a lot of us investors, we like to pattern match, right? Like we see, hey, Netflix did this also, so Jerry is following the same path. Okay, so let me give you what happened on the ground. So starting a physical tuition center sounded like a good idea. But the moment we started the physical tuition center, we had to worry about rental. And then here's the problem, right? If you can't even get sales, right, you are not going to get the cash flow to even transition to online or convince people to online. So in the early days, we gave out brochures. So it was so pathetic. Like we would spend like, I don't know, hundreds or maybe a few $1,000s, which was a lot of money to us then, printing brochures, and then they would send someone to deliver a brochure to a particular group of blocks, a bunch of apartment blocks. And we would have no idea whether the brochure was delivered or not. And after the delivery, nobody called us also. So then designing the brochure, we had no money to find designers. You do one brochure, they try to charge you like $3,000, and you're like, oh my God, we can't even pay rental. I can't afford $3,000. We don't even have a salary. So we were doing all this stuff, which was quite traditional. Then we tried to do word of mouth. We tried to have referral programs. And it all didn't really work.
Where is the turning point for you during this journey, at least for the offline business first?
So what happened was, I think within year 2 of struggling in the physical business, I thought, okay, this is not working out. We need to go into online already. We cannot wait until the physical business gets better, then we go online. We got to try online straight away because the physical business is not working out. So we tried to build an online learning platform. So this was pre-Zoom. So this was, I think, about year 2014 to 2015. The first few months, I think the first 6 to 8 months, we worked with a developer company which went bankrupt. And then all our efforts gone down the drain. We couldn't use the code. The platform was too buggy. Restarted again, I think in about late 2014. Built all the way until late 2015. And we were debugging the platform almost every day until 12 midnight. And when we finally launched the platform, we found that the tutors that came in look a bit suspicious, look a bit shady, look a bit dodgy. Because they weren't coming from Singapore, they were coming from all around the world. And I'm not sure what cameras they were using, but a lot of them, the photos look very bad. So that was one project that failed very badly. But on the side, because I didn't just bet all my hopes on this one project. Actually, I bet a lot of money on this project. So, but on the side, Udemy appeared. Yeah, so I remember launching my pre-recorded course on Udemy. I sold it for $49, and I didn't know how to do sales and marketing. So I remember in the first month, I only made like $700 or maybe less than $700 after a lot of work. So I remember I was super sad. I went to a bar to drown my sorrows, and then my friend was a bartender, and I told him the problem, and then he was kind of laughing like, yeah, it's not so simple. Life is not so simple. You think so easy make money online, and then I'm like, I still remember that moment. But actually, that was when the turning point was happening already, at my one of the most down moments, and then it goes down some more. But it still went down.
Can you talk a little bit about that turning point? Why do you say it got better after that?
Okay, so although I only made $700 from the pre-recorded course, it was still better than $0, which was what the live tuition platform was generating. So here's the weird thing, right? The pre-recorded course cost me nothing, like maybe some equipment, which probably cheaper than your setup over here. But the live tuition platform, I think in 2 years, I burned about $60,000. And to me, that time was a lot of money. Around the same time, I started reading The Lean Startup by Eric Rice, which talk about, coming up with this thing called an MVP, minimum viable product. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I've done it backwards. I've done it old school business style, like, pump in a lot of money and then you fail, you're in trouble. I should have did it the lean startup way, where you spend a little bit of money, test the product, just get a very shoddy product out to the market first and then iterate from there. So I start to realize this is, I should have, moving forward, I'm not going to spend so much money. So that's one. Next thing was when I was answering phone calls for people inquiring about the course, I was starting to hear very weird things that the customers were saying. They were inquiring. So first thing, they kept asking me for the price. Is it $49? Then I'm like, yes, it's $49. It's already written on the website. right? Why do they keep asking me that? Then after that, they ask, is it monthly? Then I'm like, no, it's just one-time payment. It's really emphasized on the website, one-time payment. I've already said that multiple times. It's very clear. You can't miss it. Is it monthly? Then I'm like, no, it's not monthly. And then the next thing they ask is it unlimited? How many? Then after that, I say, yes, unlimited. The next question they will ask is, how many can I send? Which I find it very strange. So I think one of the key turning points over there, which is very important, and it is something I still practice to this day, and hopefully your listeners will find it helpful, is a lot of times when people listen to feedback, they only hear the words the customers are saying. So they're only hearing $49 unlimited and just answer the questions and then they get on with their life. Like one thing I learned as a arts inclined student or someone very interested in literature is to read between the lines. But of course, don't do it too much. So what I saw in between the lines after getting many phone calls with people going through asking the same questions was, why are they double confirming the price again? Is it because the price is too good to be true? So that's one thing. So I remember writing down, the price may be too cheap. The customer may be frightened of the price. Because I think you will learn that sometimes if you price something too cheap, people think that, that the value of the product is not very good.
Right.
So I wrote down, I think I may have to try increasing prices. And the next thing was, they kept confirming whether was it a one-time payment or a monthly payment. Yeah. And I decided, I think I need to try a monthly payment. I think what the customer is not saying is that I want a higher price. I'm more comfortable paying a higher price. And I'm more comfortable making it a monthly payment. But no customer is going to tell you that. No customer is going to say, I want to pay more. I want to pay every month. Yeah, so that was the turning point. So I think closer to the end of 2015, with these insights in mind, we forget about the live tuition platform and we tried to start a WordPress website selling pre-recorded courses for English and math. And we ran, and again, you got the theory, everything, right? But the execution, we still couldn't get it. So at that time, my partner and I, Jimmy and I, we were both very weak in online marketing or sales, online sales. We had no marketing knowledge, no sales knowledge. And we were quarreling a lot. But most of the quarrels were started by me. So me and Jimmy were at that period of time, our relationship was really very tense. A lot of quarrels, a lot of late nights, a lot of discussions that end up with quarrels. And in the end, we decided to stop that project as well. So it failed again. So after burning $60,000, this time we were smarter. We only burned maybe 1,000 or 2,000, and then it failed again. And by 2016, I told Jimmy hey, we work together on the tuition center because we have the skills to run the tuition center. But online, I think we need to split ways and try our own methods since we cannot agree with each other. And so I started the writingsamurai.com in 2016. And so I remember launching the site to about 2,000 email subscribers. I launched a free course with you try the free course, you like it. After that, I will try to sell you the 30-day free trial, blah, 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 that kind of course. And I remember launching and crickets chirping. I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to fail again? This is terrible. This is I'm going to quit already. I'm really going to quit already. If this doesn't work, I'm going to sell the tuition center business and quit and go and work as an insurance agent or real estate agent in a sales line. And then I remember this very funny incident. My dad was sweeping the floor behind me. He was helping with the housework. So I'm like, Dad, try to sign up for this course. That time I was still living with my dad. Then he's like, what do you mean sign up for the course? Just sign up. Then he's like, hey, I know how to use computers, okay. You think what I do at work, So he was trying to sign up. And then he was scrolling up and down on the landing page. And I'm like, come on, Dad. Just click on the button that says add to cart. Just click on the button that says add to cart. Oh, at the time, e-commerce still wasn't that prevalent amongst the older crowd. Come on, just click add to cart. So he scrolled up and down. In the end, he clicked on my face. My face popped up and expanded and took up the whole screen. He was very annoyed. He tried to click the close button, but he did not click the close button on the photo. He clicked the close button on the browser. So the whole browser closed and he was back on desktop and he did not know how to go back to my site. And then he was like, waste my time. And he went back to do his household chores. And I'm like, I have a feeling a lot of people don't know that add to cart means buy the course. So I figured I spent 1 week trying to change add to cart to enroll now. Because, WooCommerce, every time you want to make a change, they will try to charge you money. And I was very poor already. So, it changed to enroll now. Launched the free course again. People sign up. I'm like, okay, finally. The button was the problem. That one button was the problem. But here's the weird thing. I think in March or April, we realized a lot of these students were coming to the physical center. So they found they like the email content. They like the stuff that they were seeing, the free videos and all the stuff that I was providing, all the content I was providing. And they started to join the physical center.
Entrepreneurship is really hard, and it's always better to have a partner to go through that with you. Yet, partnership by itself is tricky. Not all partnership ends up well. So, Jerry and his partner Jimmy really seems to be able to make it work despite their differences. And when I asked him to reflect on this relationship, this is what he has to say.
Okay, so the weird thing is Jimmy and I have very contrasting personality types. So my students and customers, when they see us in a webinar or see our lessons, they can tell we are polar opposites. Or people who met Jimmy before, they can tell that we are polar opposites. So I always joke that I'm like fire, he's like earth or water, like very contrasting one. So that's one thing. The personality is quite different. The second thing, honestly, is kudos to Jimmy. He doesn't have a temper. Yeah, so I think that kind of worked out because polar opposites, I have a temper, quite short-tempered. I'm quite impatient. I'm very aggressive. I'm very aggressive, very heart-driven. And if like looking back, right, if I had worked with someone else, that whoever who worked with me, who will probably quarrel with me or get fed up with me. But because Jimmy does not have a temper, very, very seldom. I've never seen him with a temper. Maybe only when children are rebellious or talk back to him lah. But that's very, very, very rare. And I think another thing is also like a marriage, right? We got to understand that each person perceives the world very differently. So what you perceive, the reality you perceive, is very different from how your wife perceives or how your business partner perceives. Your priorities may be very different. Priorities may be very different. Like maybe some people want to focus on family more. Maybe some people don't want to talk about work at certain times of the day. Maybe some people don't like phone calls. They prefer messages. Or some people prefer voice messages. Some people prefer text messages. Some people prefer to work at night. And I think it requires a lot of patience and understanding on both parties to listen out to each other.
Now that you found the right formula for your online business and you duplicate it with jimmymans.com as well, and you say this flywheel is working, the online business is helping the offline business and the offline business is helping the online business, and everything seems to go fine, right? Like you said, it rebounded, but then of course we come to COVID.
Yeah.
Right. And so can you share a little bit, how at the beginning of it, at least, how do you see this pandemic? Did you really see it as a huge issue, or do you feel that this is just a temporary issue? And did you make plans and how it impacted your business?
Okay, so I hope I don't come across as insensitive, because I know the pandemic, caused a lot of death, a lot of suffering, and a lot of people, their incomes and their finances were impacted. But for me, right, and people who know me, and I'm not saying this to brag, right, I'm one of those people who really like uncomfortable and challenging situations. So the moment the pandemic came, I remembered I was like semi-retired for 2 years before that. So the moment the pandemic came, I actually got pretty excited because I found it a way to test my skills to adapt and be flexible. The businessman side or entrepreneur side of me is like, all right, here comes a test, here comes a fight. All right, time to show, time to capture opportunities, time to look for opportunities. All right, that's one. The
Right.
investor side also, time to look for opportunities. So maybe some context. After the business was financially stable and my finances were all secured, and I was sort of, semi-financially free because my living expenses were very little. So I was like relaxing, holidaying. But the moment the pandemic hit, I was thrown back into work. And it felt like I was working in my early days again, like from 2012 to 2016, 17, when I was really chonging and grinding and hustling every day. So the pandemic was like that. Okay, but I had this insight that helped me realize that I don't think the current customers will run away. And I think now is the chance to really get very aggressive. Not only because I felt this was an opportunity, but because this was something I've been, I saw the pandemic and the lockdown as something that would finally get people to take on online learning. The ones that were very resistant. And I saw that as a very big wave. And true enough, the numbers showed we were hitting record high enrollments month after month after month.
Wow. How do you see both writingsamurai.com and also Great Solution? What's your vision for it in the next maybe 5 years or 10 years going forward?
We closed down all our physical centers and we went fully online because we found that we were very strong in the online arena or online marketplace. So moving forward, we are actually, the reason why we are working so hard is we are building this digital learning platform, which can help to provide recommendations to students on what to learn so they can chart out a more personalized learning journey. And at the same time, another thing I'm very interested in, because as someone who did a lot of marking in the past, and my teachers and all the teachers who do a lot of marking, is that we are interested in trying to experiment with AI doing the marking for us, like for open-ended questions. So, because that will save a lot of man hours for a teacher. And honestly speaking, a lot of people always find like, hey, I prefer a human teacher to do the marking, But I can tell you, as someone who has done marking and a lot of people who have done marking, a lot of the marking process tend to be very, very mechanical. Yep. So that's what we are working on for the next 10 years, actually. So I'm prepared to not semi-retire again for the next 10 years, and then we see how it goes. Because it's really a lot of work.
So Jerry has really went through quite a journey. He created a successful online tuition platform through many challenges. Yet, he has no plan to slow down and enjoy his success. But rather, he's already thinking about the next project to grow his business. One thing I'm really curious, after all he has went through, is has it changed how he views success?
Like a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of businessmen, I think I should spend more time with my family. So in that aspect, I don't think I had achieved a lot of good success. But to me, right, my definition of success kind of keeps changing as I grow older and older. But as for the success I envisioned when I was younger, I find like I'm almost achieving what I wanted to do as a kid already.
We also heard this saying, right, in generation wealth, right? In generation wealth, at the beginning when everyone is poor, the tough times create strong men. And because of the strong men, they created good times, and good times will create weak men. And when I say men, of course, I meant the human race in particular. And then the cycle will repeat. Do you believe in that saying? And if so, how are you cultivating, maybe teaching your kids how to be more resilient, especially now you are more financial free, but you still want to have that resilience in them?
Now, as a parent, what I would do to raise my child, number one, I would definitely like my child to experience doing some charity work. I want my child to understand that there are people born into unfortunate circumstances, and a person's success is sometimes not based on how hard they work. If let's say you're born with a certain set of handicaps, or you come from, you have these certain disadvantages, it's harder for you to have financial success or even have a kind of average kind of success just because your starting point is so far behind. So I want my child to understand that. Second thing, I also want them to do charity work because I think the idea of showing compassion is very important, because I'm very, very afraid of my children or my future progeny becoming very elitist type of people, right? So yeah, so that's something I'm very worried of. So that's one thing I want to cultivate. As for cultivating toughness, I would like my child to experience something competitive, right? Preferably maybe sports, because sports you are forced to compete physically and mentally. But if let's say my child is not very physical, then okay, compete in music, chess, But basically just join a competition and feel what's it like to perform under pressure. Because I think that can be a very life-changing experience, because I don't want him to be stressed out in the future and then break down. So I want, I think Nassim Taleb, anti-fragile, I want to expose him to controlled stress environments that can be fun, like competition, chess competition, music competition. And if it's not a competition, it can be a performance where something you have to really overcome fear. So basically, that's the kind of thing I want to expose my child to.
Yeah, so Jerry, I think one of the key characteristics that I found in many successful people is having this never say die attitude and having a very positive outlook in life. Right? And I certainly sense that from you as well. So is it something that you feel that you are born with, or is something that you feel can be cultivated to being a positive and confident person?
Oh, I believe this can be cultivated. So one of the early stories I forgot to share with you just now that changed my life was one day when we had to organize a charity event. So during that period of time in school, we had to clock in some community involvement project hours. So you must clock a certain number of hours as part of your school module. And that was in secondary 1 and secondary 2, 13 to 14 years old. And at that time, I was a very negative person, okay? I was a very negative person. I was very angsty. I listened to a lot of heavy metal. And I have a very negative view of the world, right? And even though I do a lot of projects, they were out of curiosity. It's not out of positivity. It's out of restlessness. And so what that project involved was we had to organize a race for mentally handicapped children. So it's a sports meet where they will have like 400-meter race, 100-meter race. So I remember when my class chairperson proposed that we go and organize this charity event with our seniors, in my head, I was rolling my eyes and I was sighing, because that meant I had to give up one whole weekend to do this event. And I thought, oh my God, I've been spending all my time in school. Now school won't even let me off, ask me to do this community involvement project. So I went into that event with a very, very negative attitude. So one of my roles at that event was to be a timekeeper. So I will stand at the finishing line and I will record how fast or how much time the participant took to finish the race. And then after that, I'll report my timing to someone who will be overall in charge of all the time. And halfway through, I started to realize that the whole atmosphere was very, very positive. And I thought I would be depressed. I thought I'd be very sad because I'll be hanging out with a lot of children with handicaps. So I thought it's going to be depressing, and I cannot, I got to prepare myself for all the events that happened. But I was totally surprised. All the children that day were wildly supportive of their teammates and friends running the race. So when you look at the stands, the spectator stands, all the kids were on their feet cheering their friends on. Now, when I compared it to our school sports day, I'm not trying to put down my school, but we are so-called the normal teenagers. We would be like, huddled in our own cliques, talking to one another, playing our own games. Like, I think only 50% of the school participants were supporting their friends in the race. But these kids, right, they were cheering everyone on, whether they were strangers or friends. So the positive attitude was starting to rub on me. And then I started feeling happier and more positive, and I started smiling and joking with all the other people working at the event. But there was one boy that totally reshaped my life in terms of having positive or negative outlook. So this boy, he came onto the tracks wearing spike shoes. So when you wear spike shoes, right, it means you are a pro, right? So in Singapore's context, if you go for school, event with spike shoes, athletic shoes, that means you're a professional. Don't mess with you. Okay, so he came in with a swagger and he had the tiny FBT shorts, which makes him look even more like a professional. He came in with a swagger, except when I look at his body, it didn't seem very fit and athletic. So he was very skinny and he walked in with a swagger, very confident. And I'm like, wow, this guy is so cocky. He better win this race and I'm going to put my money on him, right? And when he went onto the tracks, he actually acknowledged all the timekeepers, which is not something a child would do. He acknowledged everyone and he made friends with the people in his adjacent lanes. So he was talking to the competitors in his adjacent lanes. Very confident, borderline cocky. And he did stretching, warm-up exercises and got into his crouching position and beep, boom, the starter gun fired. Everybody started running. Guess which position he was in, Stanley?
The last?
He was the last. And here's the thing. Everybody zoomed past him and he was the last. And he's not even like lagging a few centimeters or a few meters behind. He was way behind by almost a mile. And here's the thing. I felt very, very sorry for him. Because firstly, if I were in his shoes, I would feel wildly embarrassed. So I felt very embarrassed for him. So that's one. Second thing, his body, he had a weird gait. Right? So I suspected not only was he mentally handicapped, physically he was handicapped as well. So I felt very sorry for him. I'm like, wow, very poor thing, very poor thing. But this kid, right, when he came in to the 100-meter starting point, so he had the last 100 meter to run, and the spectators were all standing there. Guess what he did? He turned to the spectators, raised both hands like that, like a rock star, blew kisses, and then he started jogging slowly, his own time, and the entire stadium went wild. All the kids were screaming. They were climbing the railing and they were cheering, they were shouting. It was like, it was as if like,
A scene from Rocky.
it was like a scene from Rocky. It's like a scene from the World Cup, I tell you.
Right.
Everyone was standing and screaming and the teachers were like, calm down kids, calm down. And the teachers trying to control the kids, they were out of control. They were screaming and cheering this guy. And this guy was just running and he turned around backwards and with swagger and he continued waving and running backwards and then he turned forward again. And he completed the race and when he finished, right, he acted like he won. He came in, he acted like he won. He turned to the crowd, he blew kisses to everyone. And at first I thought he was living in his own world. He wasn't. He went to congratulate everyone else.
Right.
He went to congratulate the winner and he came to me because I was the one taking the time for his lane and he shook my hand and he said, hey, thank you for helping out today. And he went to the other timers as well and said, thank you for helping out. Thank you for helping out. And he went back. He looked like a winner. So that day, right, that incident stayed in my mind for a very, very long time. So I realized that happiness can be cultivated despite whatever disabilities or despite whatever setbacks you may face. If you have that kind of positive attitude, you will perceive things in a different way. So, I learned that, but, when I was younger, I'm not so philosophical. So I just thought, I can choose my own happiness. I can choose to be happy. I can choose to be positive. And I think if I were to phrase that lesson now, how to cultivate a positive mindset is actually by cultivating your perspective, which is what Stoic philosophy and what Buddhist philosophy will teach you. Okay, I'm not talking about the religion, I'm talking about the philosophy. So there are tools and methods and ways of thinking to rewire your brain to perceive things in a new light. So nowadays, every time when I feel down or when I feel sad or when I get too stressed out and when things are not working out, I will always try to remember this boy because we remember stories better. And I always remember that, hey, I can choose my own perspectives. I can choose to be happy with what I have. I can choose to win my own race, run my own race. I can choose to win at my own game. I don't have to compare myself with others. Yeah.
Wow, Jerry, that's such a powerful story. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for listening to our show this week. I'm Stanley, and you have been listening to The Asian Mavericks, produced by Value Invest Asia. You can subscribe to us through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also listen to our uncut version of this interview and many others 1 week early by joining our premium membership at valueinvestasia.com. Thank you. Until we meet again, stay stay safe.